Quick prologue before this video starts. This is not exactly the video you were supposed to see. I had it 99 and change % done. Then the program crashed. Corel Video Studio, it just crashed. It corrupted my file. And this is the best of what was left that I could piece together and give you. I couldn't wrap my mind at this point around doing another 20 some hours of editing on this. So hopefully this is okay. It's not bad. It's just not as good as it was going to be. So thanks for understanding. Back to the video. Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm Thomas, and this is Zarbo Audio Projects. And today we're continuing the construction of the JAT ZAP speaker project. When we left off, the carcass was complete and basically ready for the sides to be glued on. We do have a few things to do first, however. The main thing being to install the crossover mounting system. But before we get to that, I wanted to address one particularly large unbraced panel, that being the top of the enclosure. Now, this is probably a bit overkill here, but when I knocked on the top with my knuckle, it seemed to be just a touch resonant or lower in pitch than I wanted. So I decided to try and just deaden it a touch by adding a piece of scrap wood, which I already had from the cutout from the bottom brace. This one here. Hey, I've got it, so why not use it, right? The bottom of the enclosure doesn't concern me as it will be flat against whatever it's sitting on, but the top, yeah, that could be improved just a touch. So, John, if you're watching this, next time you find yourself schlepping these cabinets around the house, give the top and bottom panels a rap with your knuckle, and you'll see that the top is higher pitched than the bottom. Anyway, back to the crossover. Getting the mounting points for the crossover board installed will be a lot easier to do without the sides on there. And that brings us to our first pro tip. Remember, whenever we build a speaker enclosure, one of our goals is to create basically a kit that just gets assembled after the finish is applied, as opposed to trying to engineer solutions for this stuff during final assembly. We want to work out all the issues while the cabinets are still in raw form and easier to tackle. By the way, if I didn't mention it already, you're not seeing double. I constructed 2 pairs of these cabinets, one for John, and since I no longer have a pair of bookshelf-sized speakers, one for me. The final bit of prep we need to take care of is to give the edges of the carcass a bit of attention before we glue on the sides. The top and bottom need the slightest bit of trimming with the router to get them flush to the front and back. Then a little massaging with my belt sander. Finally, my sanding board takes everything down to a smooth surface. Also, I had to slightly sand the braces where they meet the front and back, although I can't seem to find that footage anywhere. I think I used the round oscillating sander for that operation. Yeah, I didn't want to talk over the wonder that is me trying to wrestle a flimsy 4x8 sheet of 1/8 inch high density fiberboard onto the table saw, but it's got to get cut, and this is how I do it. It's much more manageable once it's not the size of a small room though, so don't worry. I'm cutting each panel oversized a bit, so I'll have approximately 1/2 inch extra on each side once it's glued on. In the past, I've tried to cut it closer so there would be less to trim on the sides, but it really doesn't help much, so 1/2 inch is my usual modus operandi. I'm using 4 panels for each side, so that's 8 per speaker, 16 per pair. I'm making 2 pairs, so that's 16 times 2, so a total of 32 1/8 inch panels to cut out. A lot of weight. Ooh. And that's what it looks like once I'm done. Let's try a real quick dry fit with 4 of these panels per side. That's going to give us a 1/2 inch thickness, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it should hold just fine. It is always a good idea to do a dry fit, especially when doing curved panels. Check these calls out. They are angled, the same paper on this side, so that when it conforms to the angle, I still have a flat surface to clamp it. That wasn't super clear, but what he's saying is that clamps usually only want to stay on parallel surfaces. If the sides are angled like these speakers are, the clamp will slide off. These angled cauls do two things here. First, they take care of the angle so that the clamps only have parallel surfaces to contend with, and second, because of the sandpaper on the cauls, they won't slip off the angled part of the enclosure. That sandpaper increases friction to the point where they will stay put, even though they're on an angle and lots of pressure is applied. But now that we know that we can clamp all 8 boards to the curves, let's break out the tight bond. One more thing. The HDF has a textured side and a smooth side. Our next pro tip, give that smooth side a good sanding with medium grit sandpaper to take the shine off and give it some tooth. Oh, and I found that lost footage I was talking about where I was sanding the braces where they met the front and back panels. Those seams were almost perfect, but just needed a touch of sanding to get them flush. You know, I have hundreds of clips to sort through when I'm making a video, so it's kind of a wonder that I don't misplace more of them. I am ready to start the process of gluing the side panels to the carcass of the speaker enclosure. Now, once you get going with this, you really can't stop, so you got to have everything sort of prepped and laid out in advance. I've got the tops of the speakers marked out so that I know which is the top and which is the bottom, because once they're closed in, you can't really look in there to see. So it's a good thing to mark that out. I've got my side panels here. I sanded them previously. I've got them dusted with a wet rag, so all the dust is off of them. I got my glues that I need here, my wood glue here that I'm going to use to glue the panels to each other. I got my Gorilla Glue, the foaming action glue that I'm going to use to glue that first panel to the carcass. I got my roller here set up because we're just going to dump glue on this and roll it out. We're not going to fuss with it. We're just going for bulk application here. Over here I got my clamps. I've got my cauls with sandpaper on them to keep things from moving and to apply even pressure. I think I'm ready. Wax paper, I got some wax paper down here to prevent stuff from sticking to the table because I've had that happen before. A lot of little tips and things you see me doing are the results of accidents and things that I screwed up. So I've also got it raised up 1/4 inch or so on these 1/4 inch pieces of MDF, because these boards here are not perfectly cut to height. They're about 1/4 inch longer than the cabinet on the bottom because of that 1/4 inch piece of scrap wood. And I got a little more than 1/2 inch here. It's going to get trimmed later, but you want to have extra so you're not like fussing at the last minute here when you're trying to glue everything up. You want to have extra and trim it off. That's the easiest thing to do. Well, you'll see. Once you get going, you kind of got to really keep going, and things happen fast. So, all right, here we go. Oh, I forgot gloves. Gorilla Glue's very stainy stuff, so you want to put gloves on your fingers if you can. Okay, I've sped this up 500% or so, but this actually still took nearly 10 minutes to do in real time. I might look a bit frantic, but really you do kind of need to move quickly because the tight bond to wood glue that I'm using to bond the panels to each other only has a 10 to 15 minute working time. John actually commented on part 1 of this video that I should look at tight bond 3 for an extended working time. And yeah, it has 20 to 25 minutes of working time, so I think I'll use that moving forward whenever I'm in a time crunch. Thanks, John. Hey, but don't expect me to give you any electronics advice though. I don't want to be responsible for burning your house down. I'm applying the glue to the rough side of the HDF here. It's kind of like a sponge. The glue really soaks into it, and so you need to make sure that you have more than enough than you think you'll need. I don't put the yellow glue on the last inside panel. That will get the brown Gorilla Glue. The truth is that quite a bit of the glue is going to squeeze out of the panels once they start getting clamped onto the enclosure carcass. That's fine though. What we absolutely don't want is for there not to be enough glue, because then it may not adhere well enough. Depending on where that happens, it could be catastrophic, so the lesson here is don't skimp on the glue. Now that the panels for both sides are swimming in glue, it's time to apply a liberal amount of Gorilla Glue to both sides of the carcass. I use this on the frame of the speaker not because its bond is any stronger than the tight bond, it actually isn't. I use it because it expands as it cures. It foams out and kind of seals up the cabinet on the inside. Back in the day, I used to caulk all my speaker cabinets on the inside for good measure because I was never sure my woodworking was going to be airtight. Using Gorilla Glue kind of makes that unnecessary. Okay, we're in good shape. I haven't had a stroke yet, and the side panels haven't glued themselves into rigid sheets of high-density plywood, so let's soldier on here and wrap this glue up. I prefer to get the front squared away first, since that doesn't really have an angle to contend with, and it's just easier to clamp. Something my father told me when I was a kid was that you don't have to clamp the crap out of something to get it to hold. If you go too crazy clamping things super tight, you'll squeeze out most of the glue. You do want things to be touching and snug, but you don't want to squeeze things so hard that you shoot out all of the very thing that's supposed to hold it all together. These angled cauls make pulling the side panels flush to the cabinet almost easy. I've done this before with cauls that didn't have the angle on them, and it did work, but this is much more secure. And I have every confidence that when I come back in an hour to see how things are going, I'm not going to find that one of the clamps slid off and now my cabinet is ruined. On your mark, get set, go! And they're off. Yeah, I know this is silly, but just humor me for a minute, would you? The glue up on the left is what you just saw, and the glue up on the right is footage from the next cabinet I glued up. Care to guess which method will be quicker? On cabinet 1, I applied glue one panel at a time, and second cabinet I decided to try laying out all 3 panels at once and hitting them with glue in one go. Here's what that footage looks like in my editing program. Yep, it's not really even close. Gluing all the panels at once was almost twice as fast. I don't know if I enjoy doing it that way quite as much, but I can't deny that it was a lot quicker. Well, I made a little mistake here. I don't think it's a big deal, but I did make a mistake. When I glued the first cabinet up, if you noticed, I had put some wax paper down on the surface of the table. And I forgot to do that with this one, so I've kind of glued the cabinet to the table. I don't think it's a big deal. I think a few whacks of the mallet are probably going to release it, but just in case, I'm going to throw the clamps on the less strong parts. A few whacks, huh? Yeah, have I got news for you, big guy. Try a few dozen whacks. That wasn't fun, but I knew it would break free at some point. I was kind of glad I didn't have to break out the sledge. I don't want to press my luck though, so this is probably a good place to stop. But listen, if you lasted this long, why not choose to subscribe and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.